This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
But we're little ahead of recording schedule.
Yeah.
This week we're trying to do chapters 7 and 8. I think we just released, what would it have been, chapter 3?
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4.
Yeah, but we did 5 and 6 as one. That's pretty short.
Oh, that's right.
So we're actually only recording one podcast out right now.
Oh, okay.
So I've got one to edit, and then this one will be in the bag.
Oh, yeah, we were a couple ahead, and then we started trying to do twice a week.
Yeah.
Release twice a week.
Yeah, and we're still ahead, but we haven't really gained any more.
Okay.
And also because we did the 2 chapters in one on the last one. So instead of doing 2 episodes out of that and being ahead one more, I just condensed it to one.
Cool.
Because we only recorded for a little over an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I can split it up, but it went together so well. We almost didn't break. I think that's going to be a seamless transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. But today, Rand is done with his hike through the woods, and he is returned to Emond's Field.
Yeah, pretty much in the second paragraph, Rand staggers into the village.
Just something I noticed. He comes in, right, with the dawn. He who comes with the dawn.
Oh, Jesus. I didn't notice that, but yeah.
I don't know if that is intentional or has any relevance. I doubt it, but I thought that was funny. I was like, oh, dawn. Yeah, he's walking into the village at dawn. It's, the prophecies are pretty vague. That could have been it. So yeah, he comes walking in, and he sees just what he expects to be a haven for him and his father, because he thinks, well, we've been attacked, but surely the village is fine.
Yeah.
Turns out, not so much.
And he notices before he even walks into the village that there's way too much smoke even for a cold morning.
Yeah, he would probably be aware of how much smoke normally comes out and smell it at a distance. That makes sense. So, and then he walks in, and just like half the houses are burned down.
People are going through rubble, and there's injured people walking around, and he runs into Harold Luhan pretty quickly, who's also injured. He has a big burn on his chest, but he seems otherwise in fine health.
Probably in a lot of pain, but otherwise running on adrenaline at that point. Plus, he's a big dude.
Yeah.
And then doesn't he just run into Egwene sort of right after that?
I think Harold Luhan starts yelling for Egwene, and she shows up and leads Harold and Rand. Harold starts helping Rand carry the litter to wherever Nynaeve is.
Because we think she's the only one who can help.
Yeah. The only one that Rand or Master Luhan think can help.
Right. Well, I mean, she's the wisdom. She's the doctor. That's when someone gets hurt, you take them to the doctor. In this case, you take them to the wisdom.
Well, Nynaeve looks at Tam right away. Thought it was kind of funny that Rand notes that Nynaeve doesn't even look at Rand. She just goes straight to the wounded Tam Althor, and she quickly says that there's really nothing she can do.
She's probably got a little bit of tunnel vision looking, just triage mode.
Yeah.
Where she's just trying to figure out, what can I treat? Who can I treat? How do I do it? And she realizes very quickly that she cannot treat Tam. Rand is, of course, immediately shocked because he thinks that this is his only hope. And she says, nope, nothing I can do. I know what I can do with my medicines, and I know when it's too late. Don't you think I would do something if I could? But I can't. I can't, Rand. And there are others who need me, people I can help. And I think that's such a foundational statement for her character. She is able to triage throughout the entire series what she can and cannot do. And there's times when she leaves behind people from the Two Rivers who she wants to help because she knows she can't. And there are other things she has to learn first. She has to...
That makes sense.
And she does see people that she can help and heal. There's a couple of times where she heals sick kids just because she sees them. So anyway, I think that's such a great quote for Nynaeve, and it really establishes her character. She does what she can, where she can.
I like it. Ooh, I also like, before we get too far past this, right before they get to Nynaeve's, or wherever Nynaeve is, Harold Luhan notes that as his house was burning down, Elsbeth Luhan killed a Trolloc with a cast iron frying pan. And I just like that imagery.
Oh, it's great. I think later Moiraine says few men can have claimed to have killed a Trolloc, and much less by themselves. And here's
a housewife from the Two Rivers beating an 8-foot tall monster to death with a frying pan.
You take her seriously from there on out.
Yeah, like, she's a great character.
She gets a bunch of little great lines like that throughout the entire series.
Yeah. She's the scariest person or whatever.
She's the biggest, hardest person in the Two Rivers.
Yeah.
You'd think it would be her husband, the blacksmith, but nope, she's almost as big and twice as mean.
Yeah.
We get to find out that Bella's alive here.
Bran al'Vere tells Rand when he arrives at the end right after this that she ran straight to the inn for one reason or another.
Smart horse. Sort of like when my dog ran away from the park and I freaked out. And I came home and Timber was sitting at the front door waiting for me. There was a garbage truck, I think, that made a loud bang and terrified him, and he took off. He hasn't done anything like it since, but he scared me pretty bad. But yeah, Bella's smart. She went home. She went to the only other place of safety she knew, which was
like the only other place she goes, probably.
He does say, in the first chapter that she knows the route better than he does.
Yeah,
that's what Tam says. So obviously, no problem getting home. One thing I kind of noted is that the destruction of the town, they destroy half the buildings, and that does lead to a rebuilding phase, and that sort of continues on into the building up of Emond's Field into sort of a bigger metropolis.
Yeah.
And sort of that starts here with this destruction. And they get to do a lot of rebuilding here.
I think kind of catapulted by the refugees that I think Perrin brings later. Is it Perrin? Is it all Perrin, or is there... I think there's more to it than that.
Well, what's happening in the series at the time is most of the land is in war, especially west of the mountains. And I think the Seanchan are coming in, and so a lot of people are fleeing. And also there's civil war. There's a couple other wars going on over there. And so a lot of what happens is the refugees basically cross the mountains, which would normally be impassable, but I'm assuming lots and lots of them die in the crossing because they're desperate.
Probably.
And so what happens is you get a bunch of refugees just basically fleeing from the rest of the world, but specifically they come over the mountains. They have skills like better weaving and making non-thatched roofs and pottery and porcelain and things like that. So they bring a lot of skills into the Two Rivers that help them sort of grow into a more modern city.
Sure. And manpower in general. There's not that many people in the Two Rivers, I figure.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of them end up joining either Rand or Perrin's army.
So then we see Rand go to what he thinks is his only other option, where he drags Tam to Bran al'Vere, to the mayor, who he thinks, well, if Nynaeve can't help, then there's only one other person that could possibly help me in this situation, and that's Bran.
Yeah, and at this point, basically he's taken Tam to the emergency room, and they've said, no, we can't do anything, and so he just doesn't know what to do. And he's in shock, right? I think we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, that when he walks in and sees Egwene's hands...
Oh, right.
He doesn't really understand why they're clean.
Yeah, which when I first read it, I thought was a little ridiculous, because Rand definitely understands things like this, like basic sanitation. It's backward, but not that backward. And then Seth pointed out that he's just in shock here. He doesn't understand why Egwene's covered in soot except from the elbows down.
Yeah, it just seems to be something that he can't even comprehend. And normally when you see somebody with their hands clean, they're clean all over.
Right.
So it's not this stark contrast. And so the idea of seeing someone like totally blackened with soot, except for clean arms from like the elbow down, it would just be like a very odd thing. And if you think about it for a second, you can figure it out. But he is in so much so much is going on in the town. So much of it's been burned down. His haven isn't there anymore. He's in total shock. And obviously he's exhausted.
Yeah, he hasn't slept in like 30 hours or something. Dragged a litter through the woods. That's like making the walk 10 times as hard.
And it really was from supper till dawn.
Yeah.
So, dragging a litter for
it takes him like 12 hours.
Yeah, 8 to 12 hours.
Which I think, or we kind of concluded would probably be more like a 3 or 4 hour walk.
On the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But since he's dragging a litter through the woods, it takes him 3 or 4 times as long.
Yeah, easily. And he's probably not going in a straight line either.
Yeah.
You can't when you're in the woods. So this is really where I think there's some interesting stuff going on. When Thom starts talking to the mayor. Because they sort of have a little conversation while they're sitting there. And Rand's freaking out. He's like, I don't know what to do. They've sent Thom off to check with Nynaeve, and she was like, hell no, I'm not, I already looked at him. There's nothing I can do. Like, leave me alone. I've got people that I can help. And so he comes back and he wants to tell them that Moiraine can heal, but he thinks that if it comes from him, they'll reject it out of hand because he's a stranger. And so he manipulates Bran into bringing it up, which I thought
thinking about Aes Sedai.
Totally, which I thought was really clever.
Oh, yeah. That is a really good catch there. I was just wondering, Thom said, if the mayor knew who scrawled the dragon's fang on his door. And then he says, someone seems not to like him anymore. Or maybe it's his guests that they don't like.
Yeah, and then he shuts up.
Yeah. And Rand is like disgusted by this. He's like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, there's more important things happening right now.
Yeah, totally. And what he's saying is, remember the guests. Bran, you know the stories. Come on, they can heal. Put it together. He's like a bunch of country yokels. Let me just give you that hint. Figure it out. It's not that hard. And eventually, of course, Bran arrives there. By the way, who do you think scrolled the fang on their door?
Well, Master Alvir thinks it's probably the work of the Cogners or a Copland.
Do you think he's right?
Probably. Because I think the Dragon's Fang is mostly a ridiculous superstition thing.
I think it was Fane.
I thought you might say that, but I couldn't figure why. Although, I thought it was weird that, why is his wagon burned? Sitting in front of the inn here. I forgot to mention that as we were coming up to it. But his wagon's all burned up.
So this is what I think happened, is, Fane obviously led the Trollocs and the Myrddraal there.
Right.
And so he probably went out and said, hey, here's where their houses are. He told the Myrddraal where the 3 boys were. He led them right to them. That's why the houses were targeted, which we see in this chapter, that they came after Abel Cawthan's house, Perrin's, the where Perrin was staying, and Rand's farm was really the 3 places they targeted. And the reason they did that is because Fane informed them what was going on. But I think Fane told them not to do it that night because it was winter night and there was a celebration going on, and the Myrddraal jumped ship and did it anyway. And so Fane didn't know that the attack was happening that night.
I see.
And so his stuff got burned and he ended up losing everything and running.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because he was going to get caught up in the fighting as well.
We do see Lan say right after this that it probably saved a lot of lives that the Myrddraal is ignorant of Two Rivers customs, and assumed that, I think, was it the Cawthan family wasn't in their typical residence, or the Ibaras? I forget. But
just the fact that the entire town was in town.
Yeah.
I think if everyone had been out on their farms, it would have been a different story because there would have been far fewer people in town.
Oh, yeah, that too. But he mentions they burned down an empty house, I think.
Yeah. Well, they're just tossing torches into them.
Yeah. But that's a good point that there is just pretty much everyone is staying in town that night.
Right.
Where typically people would be dispersed.
And so I was thinking, well, wouldn't Fane know that? Wouldn't Fane know that they were in there and tell the Myrddraal not to attack? He totally would. So I'm thinking the Myrddraal went ahead and attacked without consulting Fane about that night. Because A, Fane got caught in the attack, and B, it was a terrible night to attack. But clearly the Fane must have inform the Murdral of where the boys were staying, because they targeted those places.
Yeah. Yeah, Fane would have known, but maybe he doesn't know the exact date. Maybe he shows up in town and he's like, oh, a festival today? And doesn't care? And then, like, he can't communicate with the Myrddraal while he's staying in the inn.
Oh, that's entirely possible. Yeah. I'm thinking maybe he went out there and told them where the boys were, and that's what started the attack.
Maybe.
And he was like, here's where they are. I'm going to head back. And they're like, no, we're going to attack. And he's like, wait, my stuff's all still there. And then they were like, yeah, we don't care. And then he ended up, trying not to get caught up in it.
Yeah.
Who knows what we don't know the exact give and take, but clearly there's some disagreement between Pet and Fane and Myrddraal.
Yeah.
And that is a repeating theme. Mm-hmm. They have disagreements. But there comes a point where Fane wins his disagreements with the Myrddraal.
Yeah, I guess for now, the Myrddraal's the one who's actually in charge.
Right. Fane's just a dark friend, a fairly low-ranking one.
For now.
Here they're sort of telling the story about what Moiraine did. She came into the town, and she burst out of the inn, yelling there were Trollocs coming, and was fighting them.
They sense the Trollocs only like a minute or two, it sounds like, before they actually arrive in the town.
Oh, if that, yeah. I mean, they don't sense them that far out, and if they're charging in.
Yeah, that could have been a mile or something.
I don't know what the Warder Aes Sedai sensitivity to Dark Friends is. How far can they sense them? It's never really explicit.
No, I can't think of a time when... There's always just like a vague sense when they're very close.
Who knows how much warning they got, but not much. And, in the beginning, Rand wonders how Luhan knew there were Trollocs. Well, one of the ways he knew is because the Aes Sedai were out there yelling, Trollocs are coming! Yeah. So, that's how everyone would know what they are, even if they've never seen Trollocs before. Just, how does he know they're Trollocs?
Because someone told him. Master Elvir suggests bringing Tam to Moiraine, and they do that. And we walk up watching Moiraine, I assume, helping dispose of the bodies of Trollocs, and Lan is like rifling through the pockets of their corpses to see what he can learn. And he's collecting these badges. And just as we walk up, we see Lan like cursing and saying that that's 7 bands of Trollocs that were working together, and that hasn't happened since the Trolloc Wars.
At this point, Ishmael must be involved, because otherwise there's no way you get that many Trolloc bands to work together.
Right.
I also think it's fun that the names of the Trolloc bands are where we get a lot of like names of mythological creatures.
Right.
The kobold, the goblin, the banshee.
Daimon or something.
Yeah, the demon. Yeah. They're basically twisting of the English word for whatever 13 or 12 monsters. They all sort of basically every band of Trolloc is named after a monster. And I think here in particular he mentions kobold. Lan knows a lot about Trollocs. You'll notice that. Whenever he speaks up, it's usually because he's talking about Trollocs and Myrddraal.
He does. And I'm glad you brought up that certainly Moiraine, probably Lan also could see at this point that there's probably a Forsaken involved, or at least a powerful Dreadlord, to get that many bands of Trollocs to work together, because when Rand arrives, Moiraine immediately says, "How have your dreams been, Rand?" It's like the second thing out of her mouth. She says something along the lines of like, "Oh, a little bit of light in all this darkness," when she sees that Rand is alive, because she's 99% sure that he's the Dragon Reborn at this point. And she just looks at him and says, "How have your dreams been?" And we get another one of these moments where Rand is like, "What? Well, how is that relevant? Fine, whatever. There are other things,
At this point, he hasn't had any bad dreams.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really think twice about it. She wards her dreams every night. All Aes Sedai do. So they know that they can be attacked through their dreams. And she basically says, "Hey, Rand, tell me as soon as your dreams are bad. I can fix that. I can take care of it."
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Ever, I think.
She eventually finds out.
Is it Asmodean that teaches Rand how to protect his dream? Or is it Lanfear? I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it's Asmodean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the Forsaken teaches him how to protect himself.
Which is way late.
Yeah. I think it's not until that happens in the Aiel Waste somewhere.
Yeah.
When he actually starts protecting his dream.
he's always dealing with Ishmael in his dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Even after he comes back and they, cross the streams, he's got Morden in his head that whole time.
Yeah.
So,
and Rand is a shitty dreamwalker.
yeah,
he never really develops any skill.
No, he's a channeler he channels in the dream, but he never uses any dreamwalker skills, as far as I'm aware.
No, he just accidentally ends up there.
Right.
I think he's a little more confident towards the end, but that's all Ishmael pulling him into the world of dreams.
One of the great quotes from Thom, one of the few people who actually knows anything about Aes Sedai, is he gives Rand a warning. Aes Sedai do what they do for reasons of their own, and they aren't always the reasons others think. That's not only an important message for Rand, but I think a really important message for you and me, because so often as we watch the point of view characters, they think about what the other characters are doing, and they're wrong all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have a very unreliable narrator pretty much at all times through this story.
Well, because the narrator is always a character in the story, and they're just a human.
And they get things wrong all the time.
Their view is as skewed as ours are, probably, of how people perceive us.
And I think that's super important when we get to Perrin. I think that's one of those places where if you read Perrin's chapters from what he thinks about things versus what's actually happening, he's so wrong that, like, you get super annoyed at the other characters. Fael in particular.
Yeah.
A lot of why I think people get so annoyed with her is because of what Perrin is thinking about her.
I mean, I always just had the impression, at least of Fael, that her relationship with Perrin, that they just constantly misunderstand each other. It's neither one's fault.
Totally agree with that.
They have totally different cultures and upbringings, and they're just really radically different people. It's kind of amazing that they must just really want to bone each other, because I really don't know what else is holding that together. They don't get each other at all, right? I think they're just really attracted to each other at first, and that's what makes that stick.
They need each other.
Yeah.
They're both so extreme. This is the opposite attract, right? She is outgoing and ambitious and willing to take risks, whereas Perrin is this quiet, subdued, powerful guy, but he'll never use any of the power that he has without someone like Fael. And she'll get herself into too much trouble by herself. He's
driven like only by a sense of duty. It's like the only reason he ever does anything. Right. That's not for himself or for... The three characters got themselves into trouble for their own separate reasons.
Sure. Unfortunately, Perrin doesn't get a lot of development here in the beginning until we split off after Shadar Logoth.
Yeah.
And then you get some point of view from him, and that's where he quickly becomes one of my favorite characters, because I really love him, and I may be a little prejudiced when it comes to his later point of view.
Oh, I really like him as a character. Especially towards the end when he gets really developed and he starts to become a really, clever, but sometimes brutal leader. I always think of when he needs information from like a Shido warrior.
Oh, that
and
that
he's like,
scene.
Well, you can't physically torture him, but I know what else I can do. Like torture him emotionally from the inside out. It's just brutal. But he's like spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's anyway. Perrin's development is in a lot of ways just wonderful and brilliant.
I can't even remember what he needs to know. I don't even remember.
He's looking for his wife.
Oh, right. Okay. I knew that was part of that, but I didn't remember exactly what he is asking.
There's like 3 books where he's looking for his wife. If you don't know what he's doing, he's looking for his wife. Cuts
his hand off and demands that someone heal it. They're like, it's not going to put the hand back. And he's like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. Just keep cutting off pieces.
And then he's like, you'll be the... What does he tell the guy? Like, you'll be a beggar in this town that people will remember as that poor Aielman with no hands or feet. And that just breaks him right there.
That breaks Perrin too, though. I mean, that moment is such a pivotal moment for him, because that's the moment when he throws the axe away.
Oh, right. And creates the hammer shortly after that.
The power forged hammer.
Thor's hammer. What is it called again? Mahal.
Mahalanar.
Mahalanar. I forget what Thor's hammer is named, but something similar. That was pretty much the end of the chapter. But we see Rand basically beg Moiraine and say that he'll pay any price if she'll try to help and use her healing, and Moiraine agrees.
So she says, we'll speak of prices later, Rand, if at all.
Yeah.
And, she never brings this up again in the entire series.
No.
There are so many times when she could have been like, I saved your father's life. Do what I say. Never once. Not a single time does she bring it up again. I think that's pretty impressive.
I suspected, as I was reading it this last read through, that Moiraine knows that this is a moment for her to gain his trust.
Yes.
I think if Rand were anyone else, Moiraine would probably be like, sorry, I can't help either. Because she really almost can't. She's probably killing herself at this point. And when we see how worried Lan is...
I don't think so.
She can't even walk straight.
I mean, she's exhausted.
Yeah.
Lan's a worrywart.
Sure.
She says she wanted to heal a bunch of other villagers and they wouldn't let her. So I don't think
That's
she's
true.
used all of her energy yet.
No, she hasn't. But she's
on the verge.
Yeah. You get to a point and you can really hurt yourself.
True. The tainted infection, which had spread for hours and hours and hours, really did take everything she had left, if maybe a little more than.
Yeah, and we know she's not a talented healer at all. She is she can heal, but she's not like a green or a yellow might be.
No, but I always thought she was a talented healer for her like strength level, and the fact that she's not a yellow and she still is able to heal. Whereas there's some Aes Sedai who can't even heal like a bruise.
Right. It is a talent.
Yeah, and so I do think she is quite talented at healing, even though she's not the best healer.
What are Moiraine's strengths?
Healing and battle. I think she would have either been blue or yellow. If she hadn't had such a calling to blue, I think she would have been yellow. I mean, no, she's certainly not able to heal. She's not Nynaeve style healing. She's not someone who's devoted her life to it.
Well, Nynaeve's the best in thousands of years.
Exactly. And Moiraine is certainly powerful enough. That's the other thing she has going for her, is that, maybe other Aes Sedai who aren't quite as powerful. Moiraine's sort of at the top of the normal Aes Sedai power level scale. Up there. She's not quite at the top, but she's in the, and that lets her have multiple talents. Whereas a lot of Aes Sedai only have one or two.
Right.
She is both able to do really good combat, set good wards, do some healing. Like, she has the power to do all, make gateways later.
Yeah.
Although, does she ever make a gateway, now that I think about it? Doesn't she go through the doorway before gateways really become something that are commonly used?
I think you're right. I feel like she must at some point, but she's not someone we see doing that a lot. Not someone like Rand or Egwene or...
No, and then when she comes back out, I don't think she has... She's pretty weak. I mean, she has the Terangrial. Or the Angrial.
Yeah, I was just, as we were talking about that, trying to remember... But does she get fixed eventually?
No.
Like how to manipulate, she never gets fixed.
No, she can barely channel, and that plus the Angrial that she asked for in the doorway makes her a little more powerful than she was without before.
I see. Yeah, she's not one of those characters then, because there's who Nynaeve originally heals of being stilled, and then she heals Swan eventually.
And then Leanne. And then we find out later there's a woman, I think, heals one of the guys. Who's the male channeler from the tower? Who's the healer? Flynn, is it?
Yeah, I think it is Flynn.
Yeah.
One of the ones, Ashaman, that we see a lot.
So he ends up
healer.
healing a woman, and they figure out that it restores her full power.
Yeah.
So the trick is, if you channel Saidin, you need a Saidar conduit. And if you channel Saidar, you need a Saidin conduit.
I see.
So you need in order to get your full power back, you need the opposite gender to heal you.
Interesting.
And as far as I'm aware, you can only heal a deliberate stilling or gentling. You cannot heal someone who's burned out.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
It has to do with like the violent, like a cut you can stitch back together, but when someone's burned out, they've totally just destroyed whatever ability they had.
Blew a piston.
Yeah.
Engine
shot. Yeah. Whereas, when you're gentling someone or stilling someone, you're just like cutting the fuel line.
Makes
and
sense.
then you can just stitch that back together.
Yeah.
And if you stitch it together wrong, you get less fuel, and so you have less power.
So did we get to, I guess Moiraine and Rand sit down in the room, and that's when we see Moiraine reveal this, I guess, mid-strength Angriel?
The Ivory Woman.
Mm-hmm. And she talks a little bit how we've lost the making of these. She's muses to herself a lot in the first couple of chapters, especially to a farm boy who has no understanding, and Lan who already gets this.
Yeah, I mean, she's musing to the readers.
Right. It's important that we have this information. It has to come from somewhere.
And I mean, you could say she's feeding it to Rand for his eventual use if she thinks he's a channeler, and some of this basic information could be really useful for him. But yeah, I mean, they're just feeding it to us.
Yeah.
I like what Lan says here. He's sort of just talking about prices, as Moiraine talks about prices. Death comes sooner or later to everyone, the warder said grimly, unless they serve the Dark One, and only fools are willing to pay that price. Just sort of your first hint that if you are working for the Dark One, you can live forever.
Yeah.
But then we sort of see a bunch of Dark Ones who who fail, basically, and are killed, and just how awful things are for them. Mm-hmm.
It also kind of points out Lan's obsession with death that we see through the rest of the series, which might be a strain through a lot of orders. But as Moiraine begins to heal Tam, I really liked what Rand says here, or thinks here. In the stories, Aes Sedai wonders were always accompanied by flashes and thunderclaps, or other signs to indicate mighty works and great powers. And I wrote ... because he has a few more thoughts. But then he has the thought, for all he could tell, though, Moiraine might as well have just gone to sleep. Because she's just being... I assume she, puts her hands on Tam and then just, stares at the wall. And Rand's like, what the fuck is she doing? She's supposed to be doing something.
And then one last quote from Lan, where he says, I don't even know that you are worth it, Sheepherder, no matter what she says. And I like that quote for a lot of reasons. One, I love Lan calling him a sheepherder.
Yeah. Lan calls Rand a shepherd instead of by his name for I think the next 9 books, thousands of pages.
Is it shepherd or sheepherder?
I think you could say it either way.
Interesting.
Sheepherder or shepherd or shepherding. Shepherd. Can shepherd be a verb? To shepherd? Yeah, I think so.
Sure. But shephherder?
I don't know.
I thought it would be sheepherder. Like nerf herder. And then, the other thing I really like about that is, it means that Moiraine has had a conversation with Lan where she said, hey, this guy's, valuable.
Probably the Dragon Reborn.
And even knowing that, Lan still values Moiraine more.
Yeah. I mean, she's altogether more valuable right now.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I guess that depends on how much you think the world depends on the Dragon Reborn surviving.
Well, how much does the Dragon Reborn depend on Moiraine to survive,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. But that brings us to the end of chapter 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of broke into 8 there.
Did we a little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
Felt like first page.
Okay. I don't like to talk about the TV series, but I think there is a lot of channeling they can do that's gonna be no CGI type stuff. Just we just have her sitting there and then he gets less sick. We'll morph his face into one. That's right. A pretty cheap shot rather than having, CGI channeling all over the place.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the point of view of Rand right now, or let's say Lan. In any of these circumstances, he would literally only see Moiraine staring at the wall. Yeah. And then something happens, or
we move something around on wires or something like that.
Moiraine gets annoyed and ants start crawling up his pants. Like that scene in The New Spring, He just doesn't understand why this is happening.
Yeah, what's going on? Yeah. just a little thing that like a lot of the
Yeah.
channeling you see third person perspective is just
And showing the flows,
Okay.
I feel like would be easy. You just need like colored bars of light. That'll
Right.
be easy.
it's like lightsabers. Like, you know, amateurs do that all the time. You just animate a little glowing stick. Well, you just animate a glowing flow. You know, you figure out a couple algorithms for it, and you give it a path, and you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's all. You know, maybe some lighting.
That might be interesting that nobody can see it, you know?
I think it depends on who your point of view is. I think they'll have to change it up depending on who's actually watching the action.
Yeah. Otherwise, you would see the flows if it was...
Right. And that's how they'll differentiate between male and female and stuff like that. Just a guess. Stop dropping your mic.
That's the second time I knocked it over.